Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Crafting and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I recap live trials. Just finished watching, on my second cup of coffee, the opening statements in the Chad Daybell case. Interesting. I now know what happened and why it happened. And why do we need a trial? Well, it's going to get complicated. So, we started out the day by giving jury instructions to the jurors. And while the judge is doing these jury instructions, he mentions that they're entitled to $10 a day for the first 5 days. If the trial goes longer than 5 days, then they get $40 a day. They're cleaning up. Yeah. Plus mileage. They can get reimbursed for their mileage. I just thought that was interesting. Different states have different rules about, how much you can be reimbursed. Employers, have different rules about that as well. So we first get a reading of the indictment. Chad Daybell is charged with 9 counts, 9 criminal charges that were issued by the grand jury. So the first one is conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. She was the 16-year-old daughter of Lori Daybell. Somewhere between October 26th, 2018 and January 15th of 2020. Also grand theft with deception. That's count 1. Count 2, first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. And within that count, it doesn't say that he had to have committed it himself, but he could have compelled someone else to do it as well, is what I think is going on here. Number 3 charge, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow. He was the 7-year-old autistic son of Lori Vallow. Number 4, the first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow. Number 5, conspiracy to commit the murder of Tammy Daybell. Tammy Daybell she had been married to Chad for 27 years, since 1990, 20, whatever that adds up to. I'm terrible with math. 24 years? A long time. Charge number 6 is at the actual charge for first-degree murder. And it's alleged that occurred between October 18th and October 19th of 2019. And 7, 8, and 9 all have to do with insurance fraud, filing, filling out the beneficiary forms and filing claims for life insurance on behalf of, benefits from Tammy Daybell's death. Okay. So prosecutor, let me get comfortable here. Prosecutor Rob Wood, he gets up. Now, Rob Wood is one of the same prosecutors that did the Lori Vallow prosecution. But we didn't get to see her. As you'll recall, her trial was not televised. You could listen to the transcript at the end of the day. You could listen to the trial, but we had no video footage. They finally showed video in the courtroom for the reading of the verdict. So I knew what Rob's voice sounded like, but I had never seen the man. So we got to see what Rob Wood looks like. So he had an interesting approach to his opening statement. He did it in chapters, because he said, Chad Daybell's an author. He's written books, and let's talk about this like it's a book. Okay. Chapter 1, we have 2 dead children found on his property. Now, he keeps saying backyard, but Chad Daybell had a very large property, 4 acres, I think. That's not huge, but it wasn't like just a house in a yard. He had 4 acres, and it was on that 4 acres that the bodies of Tylee and JJ were found. So he talks about how September 2nd, There's these 2 dead bodies buried on his property in September. And then October, he's got a dead wife, Tammy Daybell. And November, just 17 days after his wife dies, he's dancing on the beach in Hawaii with someone he just got married to, Lori Daybell. Not real broken up about the death of his wife. And I have to tell you, his children, his 5 children, are supporting him. They believe him. They believe that he's not guilty. So he talks about how Chad is an author who wrote books about the apocalypse, that he had been married to Tammy Daybell since 1990, and they started a publishing company. Now, apparently, Tammy Daybell ran the publishing company. She was sort of the brains behind the operation. He wrote the books. She published the books. A very small operation. And they had 5 children that are all now grown children, all 5 of them. Now, chapter 2. Chapter 2, Lori Vallow Daybell. So Rob talked about how she was a homemaker on her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, and had 2 children, Hailey Ryan, who at the time was 15 or 16, and she had JJ Vallow, who was 7 years old, and he was autistic. Now, wasn't actually her biological child. She had adopted him. He was the biological child of I get confused about this. It's a family thing. Somebody in the family gave birth to this child, and because of drug issues, the child was turned over to the grandparents, and eventually Charles Vallow and Charles Vallow and Lori Vallow adopted JJ Vallow. And we're going to hear from the grandmother, and she'll explain all about how JJ was born and who his real parents are. The whole situation is really sad. And he was autistic. Cute kid. Very, very adorable child. So she was a stay-at-home mom taking care of these kids. So on October 26th of 2018, Chad and Lori met at a conference where he was peddling his books. He had his card table set out. He gave a little talk during the conference, and then he had his little card table set out and his books, and he's giving away. And all of a sudden, here comes this gorgeous woman, and next thing you know, she's helping him sell his books, and she's sitting beside him, and numbers were exchanged. That started the whole ball rolling here. So the prosecutor talks about how Chad Daybell created an alternate reality. He believed that he was James and Lori Vallow was Elena. James and Elena, they had met in past lives, more than one life. Every life they meet up. So if he gets the death penalty, and he is facing the death penalty in this case, he'll meet up with her again, I guess, someday. She did not face the death penalty because of a mistake that the prosecutors had made during the discovery process. They did not turn over the discovery in the proper time frame, within the proper time frame, which wouldn't have given the defense enough time to hire a death penalty expert and get everything reviewed. And so as a sanction, death penalty was taken off the table. But it is still on the table for Chad Daybell. So James and Elena, they meet, i.e. Chad and Lori, and they start making plans for their future and removing obstacles from their future, including Chad Daybell. I have to get all these players straight. Charles Vallow, her current husband, she was married to when she met Chad. Tammy Daybell, his wife of 20-something years. The children, they would label them as dark spirits and zombies and then justify getting them out of the way. And they would have to have casting off the spirits. So they could get rid of these spirits by several ways. First was to try the casting. And there's going to be people that were in their inner circle that believed all this religious mumbo jumbo. And were going along with it, that went along with these castings, and they thought they were dealing with evil spirits. And so if that didn't work, then you could burn the body. And then if that didn't work, you killed the person. So according to Rob Woods, they developed a convenient narrative for all of this. Then he talks about Alex Cox. Now, Alex is deceased. He died in December of 2019 of natural causes, they're saying. He was found dead on his bathroom floor, and allegedly it was a pulmonary embolus. So, but he was brought into their inner circle as well, this religious inner circle that they had, where James and Elena, or i.e. Chad and Lori, were these prophets, and they were foreseeing the future and come with us to Idaho. And anyway, they exalted Alex. Alex was exalted. Yes. But you're going to hear Alex's name a lot because, as the defense attorney put it, this guy would do anything to help his sister Lori Vallow. Anything. He shot and killed Charles Vallow. This was the first obstacle that they had to get removed. At the time, Lori thought she had or was the beneficiary of $1 million life insurance policy that Charles Vallow had. Well, Charles was on to her, and he had even told the police, she's crazy. She's going to kill me. Anyway, he gets killed. But before he does, he changes the beneficiary to the grandmother, the one that took J.J. Vallow from the original parents because of the drug issue. He made her the beneficiary. Her name's Kay Woodcock, and we're going to hear from her testimony. So as soon as Lori found out, she was not happy, but she still had the Social Security checks that Tylee would get, because Tylee Ryan was not Charles Vallow's child. Tylee Ryan was her second husband's child. And there's been some suspicion, it really wasn't mentioned during the openings, but there's been some suspicion that he may have even been murdered by Lori Vallow through Alex Cox, trying to protect her. Apparently, this Alex Cox was easily manipulated by his sister. So the prosecutor talks about how Tylee Ryan was last seen on September 8th of 2019. And then later that year, or the following year, her body was found charred and dismembered on Chad's property. And then J.J. Vallow's body was also found, and it was determined that he had suffocated to death. Now, my recollection from the evidence in Lori's case is they couldn't actually determine a cause of death for Tylee because of the condition of the body was just horrendous, disgusting. Yeah. So Lori, even after their deaths, of course, nobody knew they were dead, but she continued to get Social Security benefits. So she was convicted of receiving those stolen money from Social Security. So then we have the death of Tammy. She dies October 18th, going into the 19th. Apparently in her sleep. It's determined that to be a natural cause. There was no autopsy, just, okay, natural causes, they bury her. Well, eventually they go, and this is just 17 days later, that Chad and Lori get married, and they go to Hawaii, and they're dancing around on the beach. and filling out applications for apartments, indicating they don't have any children. And the media is going, where are your children? Where are your children? And they're not talking. They were ordered to produce the children, court ordered to produce the children by a certain date, and they didn't. So Lori was arrested in Hawaii, extradited back to Idaho, and could not produce the kids. So she remained in jail. Eventually, the children were found on Chad's property, and then he was taken into custody after that. Rob Wood mentions the attempted murder of Brian Boudreaux, who was the nephew of Lori Vallow. He was shot at. He's coming home. He sees this Jeep that looks a lot like Tylee Ryan's Jeep. And there's a gun pointing out of the back end of it, and someone shoots at him. Now, it's believed that this is probably Alex Cox. Now, after that, JJ's grandmother, Kay Woodcock, comes back into the picture, and she's not heard from JJ in a long time. And so she asks the police, can you go to Lori's and check on JJ? They go out, they go to Idaho, they check on his welfare. And Lori actually tells the police that, oh, JJ's with a friend of hers back in Arizona. And we're going to hear from a friend of hers. It's going to take the stand, Melanie. Melanie's going to say, no, the child was not with me. Yeah. And then Rob Wood, the prosecutor, mentions on September 9th, the day after Tylee Ryan is last seen, Chad sends a text message to his wife that he has killed a raccoon on their property, shot him, and that he's burning the body of the raccoon and he's going to bury it in their pet cemetery. They had taken a little bit, a little portion of their 4 acreage property and turned it into a pet cemetery for, dogs and cats. They buried it on their property. I took mine to the vet, had them cremated, but okay, they buried it on their property. So he had told her the day after Tylee's last scene that he's burying a raccoon out on the property. So now we get a break, and we come back from the break, and the defense does their opening. And he starts out by saying, don't be distracted by speculation. Just listen to the evidence. Don't be distracted by what you're going to hear. So apparently everything we're going to hear is just speculation. So he admits that his client, the defendant, writes about premonitions, and he writes books about dark and light, and he writes children's books, he writes teenagers' books, but they're all based on fiction. Okay. Then he talks about how Chad had no involvement in the death of Charles Vallow. They're all blaming it on Alex. Alex is the one that shot him. And he had no involvement in the attempted murder of Brian Boudreaux. Then he talks about Lori being very sexual and very manipulative. So they're really going to be pointing fingers at Lori and Alex. So he said and he spent a bit of time, you're going to hear from an expert that's done a cell phone extraction of, and done cell tower data about the whereabouts of Alex Cox, and Alex did this and Alex did that. So we're going to hear all that. We're going to hear from a DNA expert that they've hired, that all of the DNA found in the bodies, what could be found is either Alex's or Lori's, but not the defendant's. We're going to hear from a medical examiner expert that's going to come in and say there's no way to determine how Tammy Daybell died. We don't know. It was unknown cause of death. And then he says we're going to hear from the Daybell children that are going to come in and talk about the illnesses of their mother, how ill she was, and that she wouldn't go get help. So that's going to be the trial for the next 5-6 weeks. Okay, so that is the opening statements, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. If I can't answer them, I'll research it and I'll give you some kind of response. So have a wonderful day. I will see you guys tomorrow for an update on this case, because they have started a presentation of the evidence. So I'm going to take a look at that, and I'll recap that for you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.